The male friendships. There's a book some researchers did just on teenagers and male friendships. And interestingly, guys talked very openly about their male friendships and about how a guy friend was somebody they could totally confide in. It was like an alter ego. It was a mirror of myself, they would say. And they felt they could not do that with their girlfriends. They could not do it with their girlfriends, but they could do it with the guys. And with the guys, you know, it was okay to be vulnerable with their guy friends. It was okay to cry with their guy friends. You know, I think these things here are why sports are so big for boys. Sports are big because sports give us all these things. They give us all these things. They give us action, risk, challenges, belonging, traditions, rituals, competition, ideals, heroes, building, destroying, to be loved, male friendship. So, what about teenage boys? Well, they want all of that, but they want bigger, better, faster, riskier, all of those things that were. They want new behaviors, experience consequences. They want to be understood. They need clear standards. They need consistency. And they need spirituality, I think, too. Okay? And I think, you know, some of these things, as you're looking at this, I don't want to give an advertisement here, but as we're looking at these things, I think, you know, some of this makes it so clear why single-sex education, especially during teen years, it's a good thing. I mean, you can do a lot more in a single sex because you're focused on these things. So let's go to a transition. Hopefully we understand a little bit about what boys are like, okay? So transition. Well, what about us? Now, what about us as adults? If we understand them a little bit better, well, now what are we going to do for them? What are we going to do for them to help them become better men, true gentlemen? One thing is, we have to give them freedom. Part of the whole point of adolescence is to become independent. So we have to give them some freedom. Not unbridled freedom, but we have to give them some freedom. We cannot be on them constantly. What else we have to do, because they're incapable of it, is to be their prefrontal cortex. You know, that thing that makes good decisions. And truly, physically, they are incapable of it. They cannot always do it. So we do have to make some of those good decisions for them. And we have to be the brakes, because they don't have brakes. They've got gas. They don't have the brakes. They don't see the consequences. I think we as adults, too, we have to teach them lessons of integrity. Integrity. Another huge thing about adolescence, you know, it's a huge transition from selfishness to being other-centered. And of course, why wouldn't they be selfish? Because until age 13, you have done everything for them. You clothe them, you help them wash, you feed them, you give them money, you give them shelter, you do everything for them. They don't have to do anything. But of course, by the time they're men, they're supposed to become a little more altruistic. So these years are years when we're supposed to transition them from just being selfish, the whole world revolves around me, to I'm just part of this thing, and I should be doing some good things for other people. So we need to guide them on the journey to manhood, and I say we, no, you need to be a mother and you need to be a father. You need to be a mother and to be a father. So, what should we be? One thing, we should be their prefrontal cortex. We should be that. And we should set clear standards for them. We do a terrible, terrible injustice to young people if we don't set standards. They may or may not accept the standards. They may violate the standards. But if we don't give them standards, they have nothing to test themselves against. Nothing. So we have to give them standards. Otherwise, they're adrift. They're adrift. They may or may not accept those standards. They may reject them. But we have to give them the standards or else they're adrift. And we also have to articulate reasonable consequences. Reasonable. Reasonable is a key. We have to articulate reasonable consequences. So if you tell your son, your 17-year-old son, if you break curfew and you're not home by 11:30, you're going to lose driving privileges for 3 months. Well, I can tell you, you won't be able to stand it. You know, it's not going to work. And so that threat will be broken soon because you'll get tired of driving him all over. You'll give him the keys back, and then he will know they don't really mean what they say. They don't mean it. So when they give me another threat, I can break that one too. So we have to give reasonable consequences, okay? And we have to follow through. You know, one of the things in Educational Psychology 101, they teach you, you have to follow through. Don't tell a student if you talk, you're going to get a demerit or detention, and then he talks and you say, hey, don't talk. He's not telling the truth. I'm not going to get a detention or demerit. So then he talks again, I told you, don't talk. So, okay, I can keep pushing the edge, right? Pushing the envelope, and we have to follow through and be consistent in those. I think it's really important that you love him, be able to separate him and what he does. Love him, not necessarily what he does. And that's a real big, difficult thing to do sometime, but we have to do that. Love him, not necessarily what he does. Allow freedom, some freedom, and don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. You know, I think sometimes parents do take things personally. You know, the mom who says, why is he doing that to me? Well, he's not. You know, he's not doing it to you. I had a mom one time, you know, and her senior son, she thought he was having sex with his girlfriend, you know, and why is he doing that to me? You know, he's not. You know, he's not. He's doing it with his girlfriend, is what he's doing. And you, Mom, are not on his mind at all when he's doing it. If you were on his mind, maybe he would not do it, but he's not doing it to spite you. Not at all. So, you know, I think parents, you cannot take things personally. We had a student years ago, nobody knows him now, years ago, they were building sets here at St. Francis. So I see the rescue squad out here one night about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I go out and I say, hey, what's going on? Oh, the school administration called us. There's a student that's sick. I said, school administration did not call you, but let's go see what's happening. So we go in, and there's this guy. He was working on stage crew, and he got into some, I think it was wine, or I don't know what he got into, where he got it, but he was out, you know, and they took him to Toledo Hospital to pump his stomach. So I call up his mom, you know, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, his father, at St. Francis. I hate to tell you this, but your son, you know, he's working at school here on stage crew, and he's been drinking, and he's drunk. No, Father, my son doesn't drink. I said, well, he does. No, he wouldn't do that. I said, well, he did. And you probably have him confused. I said, I know your son, and I know you. It is your son. Well, he wouldn't do that. He said, he did. Well, he's never had a drink before in his life. And I said, if this is his first time, he's done it in a big way. But in any case, you should go to Toledo Hospital because they're pumping his stomach. But, you know, it's a matter of, then it was all, you know, I am so embarrassed about this. And it's not about you, it's about him. So, you know, you cannot take it personally. Don't be embarrassed by what your son does, because what your son does is not necessarily a reflection of you. God gave him free will. If you created him, you probably wouldn't have given him free will. But God gave him free will, okay? So it's God's fault. But don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed by what your son does, and don't take it personally. Don't take it personally, you know. When he does something bad, he is not thinking of you, not at all. If he were thinking of you, again, he probably would not have done it. Another thing about boys, they're into these polarities, you know. He can be a whirlwind of activity with his friends, then he's totally lifeless on the couch at home. He just doesn't have any energy to take out the garbage or to do anything. You know, Ma, I am just so tired. And the friend calls and, yep, I'm ready to go. Okay, so we got these polarities. He can stay up until, he can stay up until 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning with his friends, but then he can also sleep, until noon the next day. Sometimes he needs to belong. That's one of the things. Guys like to belong to a tribe. But then there are some times I just want to be all alone. All alone. Don't bother me. Leave me alone. Sometimes he'll challenge everything with you. Challenge. No, I'm not going to do that. Why do I have to do that? But then his peers come along. Yep, okay, I'm 100% yes. We'll wear the same shirt, we'll wear the same pants, the same shoes, no problem, right? At one time he says, I want total freedom. The other time, you have to take care of me. He cries on your shoulder. He may be totally selfish one moment and totally altruistic another moment, doing something you never thought he could do to help some other people. But, boys, even more than girls, are into these polarities during teenage years. And I think part of it is what's good about boys, what's really good about boys. I think it was 2 years ago, not the year we won the state championship in hockey, the year before that, I think it was. We were doing pretty well. And I still remember we were in the tournaments, and we were supposed to make great progress in the tournaments that year, the state hockey tournaments. And we lost to Findlay. We were supposed to beat Findlay handily. We lost to Findlay. So I go in the locker room with these guys afterwards. And maybe a third of them were throwing their helmets on the ground. They were just angry. A third of them just had their heads down and they're crying. A few of them were actually throwing up because they were so upset about losing. So the next day, we get that night, we get through that night. The next day at lunch, I'm wandering around the cafeteria, go up to some of them and say, hey guys, how you doing today? It was a tough night last night. How are you doing today? Great, I've got lacrosse practice after school today, so we're going to start that. Just like that. They can switch gears. And it's really great. During this high school visitation that we had 2 weeks ago, we had all the 8th graders come from Catholic schools. So twice a day for 4 days in a row, we have these 10-minute rallies. So, we take these students, our student body. So we say, go to class, you go to period 1, I think period 2. Okay, come on down to the gym with the 8th graders, the visitors. Let's go nuts for 10 minutes. Okay, go back to class now. And they go, and then later in the afternoon, come back down to the gym, go crazy. Now go back to class for the last period, and they do it. But they're able to switch those things really easily. I've got, and in that respect, they're so different from girls. I remember a couple of years ago, we were playing at UT basketball, and I was all upset because we were losing the game. It was against St. John's, and that bothers me even more if we're losing against St. John's. But, and the students were doing some misbehaving in the stands, and we corrected the students for what they were doing and saying in the stands. And then there's one student, he started doing something, and I looked at him and said, get out. And he said, get out, just get out, leave this game, get out of here. And he's trying to explain, leave. So he goes. And of course, later that night I come home and I think, he probably didn't deserve that. So I see him the next morning, a senior in the hallway. So I go up to him and I say, hey, last night, I'm sorry, you really did not deserve to get the whole brunt of my anger. And he says, that's okay. I was fooling around anyhow. I shouldn't have done what I was doing. I said, okay, but I'm sorry. He said, yeah, me too. And the guy at the locker next is listening. He says, good talk, guys. And he walks off to class. This guy goes to class, and it's all over.